Now, let's talk about another thing that happened during COVID that might have shown us a new path to getting more teachers in the classroom. I saw this article and it was so interesting. So the question is, do teaching licenses actually raise standards? Does it actually help kids to have teachers fully licensed? Well, a good example is the state of Massachusetts. And this study was done by Boston University Wheelock College. This is our alma mater. We graduated from there. They collaborated with the education officials in Massachusetts government. And they have seen evidence that so far in the short term, reducing licensing requirements might not affect educational outcomes at all. So, and we always talk about cutting the unnecessary red tape.
Totally.
And this might be an example of, hey, maybe we were onto something. So due to COVID disrupting normal teacher certification procedures like in-person student teaching, the Massachusetts authorized an emergency teaching license in June of 2020. So this meant individuals could functionally begin teaching with just a bachelor's degree. And they eventually would get caught up through the traditional requirements once their emergency licenses expired. So they brought in these teachers with emergency licenses to specifically fill in the gaps left by COVID. So how did the students do in classes that were taught by emergency teachers versus the quote-unquote professional teachers? Well, by looking at the math and English exams, there was absolutely no statistical difference between students' performance who were taught with the provisional teachers and the emergency licensed teachers. This is fascinating because this really puts into question the whole way that we deal with hiring teachers. And how we do with, like, are we waiting too long to get teachers in there? Are we decreasing necessary competition in becoming a teacher by limiting it with these licensing requirements? It's really fascinating that student performance was literally unchanged at all.
Totally. I must say, it reminds me of our charter school discussion.
I know.
And you like the idea of a common core. Because you like the idea of a structure that ensures a common learning, a common education across the nation. I think this, like, teacher accreditation kind of sounds like that to me.
Oh, I don't.
Right? Commonality amongst teachers. You know that all teachers meet a certain standard. And so this is getting rid of a little bit of that red tape.
No. I disagree entirely because all these students are taking the exact same exam and being performed based off that. They're being measured with the same exams. I
mean, it's a different category, but it's still the idea of you don't need them to meet a specific criteria that is set to be determined as qualified. Just like with a curriculum, you don't need it to meet a certain criteria that is set for it to be a good curriculum.
Okay, maybe so.
Yeah.
But I just think it's really good that if we could expand this and study this in the future, maybe we could eliminate these teacher accreditations that take so long and are costly for people who want to become a teacher.
Yeah, and just keep people out. I mean, there's costliness, but there's also time and effort.
Well, that they asked the teachers, what was the number one reason that you don't have a license yet? And they said the number one thing holding them back was the time. It takes a long time. These people have children.
Yeah, exactly.
It takes a long time to do this type of stuff. And honestly, we might just have too much red tape getting teachers into classrooms. I know this is specific to Massachusetts, and Massachusetts has an amazing educational system, but perhaps it could be better with more teachers that don't have to go through the rigmarole of getting these licenses that add zero value to student performance.
I mean, I think it's clear once you put it as that it adds zero value. Like in my personal life, I've always hated kind of what I see as unnecessary red tape.
Nothing makes me more angry than bureaucracy.
Yeah, right. I mean, think about the college degree, and I think this is a pretty widely spread idea now, but after going through college can be a massive educational opportunity. It can make you enormously prepared for a job. But if you go through college and you go through these classes, you also know that someone who has taken a completely different path could be far more qualified for a job that decides to take you just because you have the piece of paper.
Totally.
Right? So I think the more we can identify where the bureaucracy, where the piece of paper is given way more value than it's actually worth, and get rid of the need for that, the more kind of we're going to almost unclog the economy, right?
And I think it's really important to say, as people who identify as liberals, as progressives, we don't want regulation for regulation's sake.
Exactly.
We don't want government to get in the way of good markets doing their thing.